Welcome back, every pony. When we last left off, Key and Inverno had gone out into the Crystal Empire for the day, and Shining Armor had discovered Inverno gone. Now it is time to figure out what actions are going to be taken to try to find the young colt. Inverno in F minor. Written by Craig Finkwell. Chapter 25. Daughter of Elysium in G minor. What do you mean you can't find him? Both Cadence and Twilight asked in alarm.
I mean what I've said. I can't find the little guy anywhere. He's not in his room, the music room, his old room, or anywhere else for that matter.
Shining replied. But he can't just disappear like that, Cadence pointed out. He must be somewhere in the palace. Maybe we can organize a search party, Twilight suggested. The royal couple nodded. Agreed. You and Shining do that, while I go find Professor's signature, Cadence added as she headed towards the direction of the elderly stallion's suite.
So, what happened after Beethoven?
Inverno asked, nibbling on something called a cinnamon roll.
Well,
the old Earth pony explained.
Beethoven had created a new era in terms of both music and art in general. It was called the Romantic period. To put it in a nutshell,
he took a sip of water.
All you need to know about what the mindset was about, it all has to do with putting all your passion into whatever given size of instruments you're working with. What I mean here is that in music, orchestras got bigger than ever before, playing music on an epic scale for both the players and the listeners alike. Yet on the other end of the scale, you see the same thing being played on single instruments that unleashed one innermost thoughts and feelings.
The professor paused for a moment to take a bite from his cinnamon roll.
For instance, there was this one composer by the name of Paganini who reinvented how the violin sounded. Although he mostly wrote variations of popular tunes of the time, his music was the kind where you have to have years upon years of discipline, experience, and skill even to attempt to play anything whatsoever from him. Another example is from Horst Chopin. Although he never wrote anything outside of piano music, with the exception of his two concertos, his music is highly emotional, from his preludes to his nocturnes.
What's a nocturne?
Inverno asked, finishing his roll.
It's a word meaning night, or in this case, Horst Chopin composing night music. Now that I think of it, the size of the audience had changed too. You see, the audience had increasingly become more open to even the poorest of ponies. Why, for a few bits, you can go into a theater to see an opera by Rossini, the highest form of entertainment of its time. It was a time where the subjects of these operas, or a play where everybody sings from start to finish, had become more down to earth. Gone with the tragic legends and some myths, now they're about common everyday ponies, like a barber or a soldier who fell in love, or even a bunch of bratty teenagers who, with their families, trying to find out what life is about.
So, something like what Mozart did when his papa died?
The professor nodded.
I think that's enough breakfast. Let's keep moving.
While the disguised Inverno walked close by Key's signature, he was getting lost in his thoughts. He had learned so much before breakfast than he had in a week in the palace. For example, he'd learned about a plant called grass, the system of trading bits, a thing called a cinnamon roll, and the fact that these crystal ponies looked as if they were genuinely happy all the time.
A bit for your thoughts?
Huh?
Signature clarified.
It's an expression meaning, what's on your mind?
Oh, do you have a papa?
Key looked down with a look as if he was asking him, where did that idea come from?
I was just wondering if you ever had one.
Oh,
Key nodded as he continued on.
I did once.
The colt's ears folded back.
Sorry.
No, you're right. To answer your question, yes, I did have a father, but he passed away many, many years ago. I'm actually a grandpa, which means I have children who they themselves have children.
Where are they?
Most are in Canterlot, but I have a granddaughter that lives in Ponyville.
Why does that one live in Ponyville and not Canterlot?
It's, a long story.
Can you make it short then?
I don't see why you would be interested in that.
Hey, you sometimes ask me about my papa.
Inverno pointed out.
I see.
At this point, they turned a corner and started walking towards an area where there's cheering ringing out. Inverno looked down to see that there was a mob of crystal ponies down the street.
Well, to make a long story short, when I was starting out teaching, to see what worked and what didn't, I had my granddaughter who was one of my students. At first, she was interested in playing the piano and always looked forward to my classes. Well, one day, I found out from her parents that she had taken interest in a particular pony that, while they were happy overall, I, on the other hoof, wasn't. I didn't exactly approve of her special sum pony, and I confronted with her during one lesson, and I just lost it. You thought that yesterday was extreme.
Key Signature shook his head.
That was nothing compared to what I said to her. The arguments that got so intense to the point that I yelled at her that I didn't want anything to do with her anymore, and soon she felt the same with me. So, from that day, she moved away, and that was the last time either of us have ever spoken to each other.
There was a pause for a moment until Inverno asked innocently,
Do you still hate her?
Not exactly. Now, whenever I look back, I do so with both regret and embarrassment. I had met my granddaughter's special sun pony just recently by accident, in which I was proven wrong about the both of them. Inverno, I suppose you haven't heard the phrase, the older you get, the wiser you become. It's not true. You may have more experience when you're old, but that doesn't make you wise. There are things that, even to this day, I don't fully understand. But just because you don't understand it, doesn't make it bad. I confess, there have been times I wanted to go down to Ponyville, find her and apologize, but...
But what?
he shook his head and said softly,
Inverno, you're not the only one in the world who thinks they're a monster. Ah, here we are.
The young unicorn looked up, and through his dark glasses, he saw a crowd up close. They pushed through to see what was going on. The colt saw two crystal guards in full armor, each holding a stick and a shield, running towards each other at a top speed. There was a collective disappointed moan from the crowd when they both missed.
What's going on?
Inverno asked his teacher.
This is a sport known as jousting. It's where two colts run into each other as fast as they could to knock the other one down.
Inverno saw both of the guards making another round on the track, once again galloping towards each other, until one of them was suddenly knocked backwards, making the crowd cheer loudly.
Doesn't that hurt? I mean, what's the point of this when you're trying to push someone over?
It's all out of good fun.
Are you sure?
He questioned.
I'm not sure my idea of fun is to have a few broken bones.
The professor laughed. And this concludes chapter 25 to Inverno in F minor, written by Cracked Inkwell. Well, every pony, this is still rather adorable. Inverno is learning a lot. Very minor things, but it's still all so new to him, so I can understand that. And of course, Key and Inverno are unaware at the moment of the current panic they're causing within the Crystal Palace. I wonder when they'll be made aware of that. But I also hope it won't really get in the way of their good day. After all, this was all done in innocent good intentions, and I really hope it isn't spoiled. Anyway, I do hope you look forward to more, so please stay in your seats.